Right, so let's do a quick job of mapping this version of the toadstool as well. So if we go with unwrapping the UVW, I'm going to go quickly and not necessarily talk through quite so clearly, just so that we've got. Oops. So, oh, in fact, let's put a material on it before I start. So yeah, I've showed you that way of taking the object, laying out the UVs, and then painting the texture map. For this one, we'll look at it the other way round, which is to kind of paint your texture map and then map the object onto the texture that you've got ready for it. So if we have a look at, okay, make sure I turn back facing. So there, I've got the section. I'm going to put a cylindrical map onto that. I'm going to make sure that my so again, the UVW map needs to go on after the material if you want it to show up. So unwrap UVW. Now I will be able to get what I'm after. So we can see there's my texture map ready to go. I shall pick the bottom polys, put a, come on, pick the bottom polys, cylindrically map those, fit that cylindrical mapping on with it. This one wants a little bit of a rotation. Why is that coming up so far out of line? All right. Okay. Doesn't, something is showing up in a strange place there. Okay, fit and center. Okay, it's often good to see when you get some weirdness occurring what the result is. So you can see there I've just used the rotation gizmo to be able to square this up. When the rotation gizmo was attached itself to a strange position, you can use fit and center to be able to push it into place. Turn that off, and now position my texture in about the right corner of the object. Let's have a look at the top now of the shape. Expand the selection. That'll do. Quick planar. Push that over so it lines up on the top of the object. And then if we grow that selection till it hits that edge and then deselect everything at the bottom, I can do another quick planar selection and fit that over the base. Okay, so that's the second one kind of mapped in place with a slightly different morphology, but using the same pattern. Right, so these are not really what we would call that organic at this point in time. Okay, they're very, very regular and fixed. So let's look at introducing some variation into this object. To do that, I'm going to use a modifier called noise. Applied to the whole thing, the noise modifier will take a strength in each axis, and probably for this, as a rough guess, let's start with 20. You can see what's happening as each time I enter that. You can see how we've now got a slightly distorted object. Maybe I'll go higher. Let's go with 35. Okay, so the higher my strength of the noise, the more that shape gets sort of twisted and distorted. I can create multiple versions of this. If I take another copy here, and I'm simply going to change the seed value. Why did I just lose my UVW map there? That's strange. Getting some curious behaviors here. Okay, that should copy neatly. No, Misbehaving. Right, okay. That shouldn't happen, but there's always a way around kind of fixing this. What I'm going to do then, if it doesn't want to behave, I'm going to leave this one just as like a spare. Yeah, when cloned, it's losing its UV coordinates. That is very curious. I have seen that before as a bug. Didn't happen to me yesterday though. So what is up with this? Right, right click, convert to editable poly. So I kind of fix the object. Now it should clone happily. Yeah, and I can use the noise modifier on it accordingly. You can see how that's an indication of things that sometimes misbehave in the modifier stack that collapsing the stack usually will fix. And it's just on the case of save your file so you've got a uncollapsed version if you think you're going to want any other kind of aspect of it to go from. So there we've got my first distorted mushroom. If I take a clone of it, I can create a second one just by changing the seed value. Gives me a different variation of the shape. Create another one, change the seed value, and another one with another seed. Oops. And you can see just by changing one parameter now, we're able to create a diverse set of objects, each one of which is different. You can also work with little tweaks to the scale or the orientation of any of these as well to be able to create your kind of a game asset, which is really a cluster of mushrooms or toadstools, each one of which is different. You can combine another version of the same. You can see ultimately this one is a more ripe version of potentially one of these. So you can see how I can do the same with that one. I wonder if this one will behave with cloning with the noise on it. No, same issue. So I'll have to collapse the stack and then use the noise modifier. With values accordingly. And again, create multiple copies, change the seed value, gives you a unique version of the shape. Then final preparations for being able to bring these into the game. We probably just want a I might scale that one up a bit. Is then to get them all at the right size and get them all set up as one single object. So that's my little cluster of toadstooly mushrooms. Pick any one of them, put an edit poly modifier on, and then attach each of the others to it. Okay, you can see I've used the attach functionality, so I've now got one single object. Just to make life easy, I can reset the pivot back to the middle of the object as well. Then we've got to get this to the right size for us to be kind of in scale for our world. So I'm going to make a judgment that one of these is about 10 centimeters tall. So I'm going to create a box And I'm going to set that box so it's 10 units by 10 units by 10 units. You can see how now I've got an absolute reference inside my level. Probably move it to the middle of the world as well, just so I can see it kind of where I'm aiming for a little bit more carefully. So that's how big one toadstool wants to be. Each of these, if I select them now, I'm going to select a sub-object level. It doesn't really matter what sub-object level I work at, but I'm going to go and scale all of the object down. Again, notice I'm not scaling the object, I'm scaling the vertices of the object. It's a subtle distinction, but an important one nonetheless. Can move these till they sit in the right place in my world. Okay, so look from the side, I can see they're all still a little bit big. So I can scale down a bit further and a bit more. And now I've got them in position. Remember, I'm looking to have them centered on the origin of the world, since that's taken as the export position when I move it out. If you want to be really clear, now I've got the size right, this box can sometimes, this box can also sometimes come in handy to act as a ground plane so that you can see if there is any so you can see how the objects intersect or don't intersect the floor. So we can look at those. Again, for each of them, I can still move them at the element level, even though they're part of one object. So you can see I'm positioning each so it touches the ground. I think that's one that's still floating there. That one down. So there we go. There are my toadstools. I can now clear that up. So that all I've got now is the object. And from here, I'm now ready to export that as an FBX. Let's call it Mushroom Group 2, FBX. Okay, just to highlight, embed media is ticked, which means that our texture map will be a part of that FBX file that we're going to use. And then I can quickly open up an Unreal project. Let's go with that one. I think this is one that we used many, many weeks ago. Okay, so if I now add import, import to documents. Where did I save that to? It's in Max 2021, I think, isn't it? Export. Mushroom Group 2. Okay, so as we bring those in, what we've got is, first point, a material. Okay, in my material, okay, looks like it hasn't brought my texture map over. No problem though, because I'll just import that and set it up in here separately. Documents. Okay, so I've got my Targa image. I'm going to bring that in as a texture sample, plug it into the base color node, apply it. Then let's pop my those mushrooms into the map. Maximize that. See where they are. And there you go. That's an asset from that 2 hours ago was just a photograph and an idea that is now into the game as a fully textured resource.